Right, welcome to your high-yield USMLE huddle. Today, we are laser-focused on medical genetics. Look, this isn't about memorizing the whole textbook. This is about nailing the right things, the key concepts, the buzzwords, and the connections that are going to grab you points on exam day. Let's jump right in.
So, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the basic lingo, then we'll learn to read those pedigree family trees. After that, we'll dive into the classic diseases you just have to know, tackle those tricky chromosomal problems, crush some quick and easy math, and then wrap it all up with a board-style pop quiz to make sure it all sticks. Sound good? Let's do it.
First things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page. These core terms are the absolute foundation for every single genetics question you're going to see. If you can nail these, trust me, the hardest stuff starts to just click into place.
Okay, let's start with a big one, pleiotropy. All this means is that one single bad gene can cause a whole bunch of different seemingly random problems. The classic example they love for the boards is PKU. You've got one gene defect, but it causes this whole constellation of symptoms. Intellectual disability, really fair skin, and that unique musty body odor. So when a question gives you a patient with a bunch of weirdly unrelated symptoms, a little light bulb should go off in your head that says, this could be pleiotropy.
Now let's clear up a classic mix-up, expressivity versus penetrance. They sound similar, but they're totally different. Variable expressivity is all about the severity of the disease. Think about neurofibromatosis type 1. You could have two people with the exact same bad gene. One just has some light brown spots, while the other has severe, debilitating tumors. Same gene, different expression. Incomplete penetrance, on the other hand, is basically an all-or-nothing deal. Someone has the BRCA1 cancer gene, but they never actually get cancer. The gene is there, but the disease just doesn't show up.
Okay, so now let's take those ideas and apply them to pedigrees. The USMLE absolutely loves giving you these family trees and asking you to figure out the inheritance pattern. It's really a visual skill, and once you know the rules, it becomes so much easier. Let's look at the two most common patterns right next to each other. Over on the left, we have autosomal dominant. What's the biggest clue? The disease is in every single generation. It never ever skips. If a kid has it, you know for a fact one of their parents has it. Now look at the right, autosomal recessive. See how the disease can just pop up out of nowhere with two unaffected parents? That's the classic sign it's skipping a generation, because the parents are just carriers.
Now for the one that can save you a ton of time, X-linked recessive. Yeah, it can skip generations, just like autosomal recessive. But here is the golden rule, the absolute giveaway. There is no male-to-male transmission. Think about it. A father gives his son the Y chromosome, not the X, so he physically cannot pass an X-linked disease to his son. If you see an affected father and an affected son on a pedigree, boom, you can instantly rule out X-linked recessive. It's a fantastic shortcut.
All right, enough theory. Let's get into what you'll actually see on the exam. They're not just going to ask you for a definition. They're going to give you a patient story. Your job is to connect that clinical picture to the genetics behind it.
So you see a question, and it describes a little boy who has trouble standing up, and he uses his hands to walk up his own legs, just like you see here. That is the Gur's sign. It is the #1 absolute classic buzzword for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. The second you read that, you should think Gur's sign means Duchenne, which is an X-linked recessive disease from a frameshift mutation in the dystrophin gene. That whole chain of association needs to be automatic.
Here's another absolute classic, cystic fibrosis. The whole problem boils down to what you see here, this broken CFTR channel. It's supposed to pump chloride out of the cell, but it can't, usually because of that delta F508 deletion. And if chloride can't get out, water doesn't follow. So what do you get? This crazy, thick, sticky mucus that gums up the works everywhere, especially the lungs and the pancreas. So if you get a vignette about a kid with constant lung infections and greasy stools, you should be screaming cystic fibrosis, autosomal recessive, done.
Okay, let's talk trinucleotide repeat disorders. These are famous for a phenomenon called anticipation, which just means the disease gets worse or starts earlier as it's passed down. This chart is your friend, and honestly, these mnemonics are pure gold. For Huntington's, the repeat is CAG. Just think, the caudate loses ACH and GABA. For Fragile X, the repeat is CGG. Think, chin that's long and giant gonads. Seriously, these little tricks will save you so much time and stress.
All right, let's zoom out. We've been talking about single genes, but what happens when a whole chromosome is the problem? This is where we get into aneuploidy, and these are some of the highest yield topics for your boards. You can't miss these.
Here are the big 3 trisomies you've just got to know cold. For trisomy 21, Down syndrome, look for clues like a single palmar crease.
For trisomy 18, Edwards syndrome, the buzzwords are rocker bottom feet and those tiny clenched hands. The mnemonic? Election age is 18 for Edwards. And for trisomy 13, Patau syndrome, think midline defects like a cleft lip or palate. The mnemonic? Puberty is around age 13 for Patau. Just lock in those associations.
And now for imprinting. This is a super high-yield topic where the exact same piece of chromosome 15 being deleted causes two totally different diseases. It all depends on whether you got it from mom or dad, and the mnemonics are your lifesaver here. For Prader-Willi, just remember Pope. Prader-Willi is known for obesity, and it comes from a paternal deletion. For Angelman, think mamas. Maternal allele is deleted, causing Angelman syndrome, with a weirdly happy mood, ataxia, and seizures.
Okay, take a deep breath. We're going to do a little bit of math. But please, do not panic when you see a Hardy-Weinberg question. I know it looks scary, but it's really just plugging numbers into a simple formula to figure out how common a gene is in a population.
These are the only two equations you need. That's it. The first one, P plus Q equals 1, is just about the alleles themselves, right? The frequency of the dominant P and the recessive Q alleles have to add up to 100%. The second equation is about the people, the genotypes. The frequency of homozygous dominant plus heterozygous plus homozygous recessive. That also has to add up to 100% of the population.
So this is what a classic USMLE question looks like. They give you the incidence of an autosomal recessive disease, which is just a fancy way of saying they're giving you Q squared, and then they ask you for the carrier frequency, which is just 2pq.
Let's just walk right through it. Step 1. We know Q squared is 1 over 3200. Easy. Step 2, to get Q, we just take the square root. Now you don't need a calculator. The square root of 3200 is close enough to 56, so Q is about 1 over 56. Step 3, and this is the big shortcut, since P plus Q equals 1, and Q is a tiny number, P is basically just 1. We can just approximate it. And now for the final step, calculate the carrier frequency 2BQ. That's just 2 times 1 times 1 over 56, which is 256, or simplified 1/28. See? Not so bad.
Okay, team. You have just powered through a ton of high-yield info. So now let's lock it in with a few quick board-style questions. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Okay, read that vignette carefully. What's the money phrase in there? What disease is it pointing to? And what's the inheritance pattern for that disease? Take a second.
The answer is the X chromosome. And why? Because uses his hands to push off his thighs is the Gowers sign. Gowers sign equals Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And Duchenne is our classic X-linked recessive disorder. You see how that chain of logic just walks you right to the answer? Perfect.
All right, next one. Again, hunt for those buzzwords. What's the syndrome they're painting a picture of here, and what's the very specific genetic cause we just talked about?
And the answer is the father. That combo of intellectual disability and that insatiable appetite, the hyperphagia, that's Prader-Willi syndrome. And what was our mnemonic? POP. P, Prader-Willi, O, obesity, from a paternal deletion. The mnemonic literally gives you the answer. It's that easy.
Okay, one last one to make sure you've got that math down. They're giving you the disease frequency, 1 in 10,000. That's your Q squared. And they want the carrier frequency, 2pq. What's the very first thing you do? Take that square root. Go ahead, think it through, and hopefully you're feeling a whole lot more confident about any genetics question they can throw at you. You did great work today.